What if I told you that the biggest breakthrough in renewable energy history was almost dismissed because of ageism? What happened next will completely change how you view innovation, success, and the dangerous assumptions we make every single day. This is a true story that shook Silicon Valley to its core. The marble floors of the Moscone Center gleamed under harsh LED lighting as hundreds of ambitious entrepreneurs clutched their laptops like lifelines. TechVenture Summit 2024 wasn't just another pitch competition. It was the ultimate proving ground where dreams either crystallized into billion-dollar realities or shattered against the unforgiving wall of investor skepticism. 24-year-old Ezra Chen straightened his charcoal blazer, feeling the weight of 8 months' work compressed into a 7-minute presentation. His revolutionary water management system could save cities millions while providing clean water to underserved communities. But in this room full of prodigies, revolutionary wasn't enough. You needed to be extraordinary. Remember, whispered Kai Patel, his co-founder. Volkov invested in Tesla when everyone thought electric cars were a joke. He sees potential where others see problems. Dmitry Volkov commanded respect like gravity commands objects. Inevitably and without question. The former SpaceX executive had built a reputation for identifying world-changing technologies before anyone else recognized their potential. His portfolio read like a directory of companies that had reshaped civilization: sustainable fusion, quantum computing, neural interfaces. The competition format was brutal in its simplicity. 7 minutes to present, 3 minutes for questions, and a panel of 5 investors who could detect weakness like sharks smell blood. The winner received $15 million in funding, guaranteed partnerships with Fortune 500 companies, and access to distribution networks spanning 6 continents. Ladies and gentlemen, Volkov's voice cut through the nervous chatter. Today we're not just investing in companies, we're investing in humanity's future. Show us ideas that don't just generate profits, but generate hope. The first presenter, a quantum encryption prodigy from Stanford, delivered a flawless pitch about unhackable communication systems. Her slides were masterpieces of design, her delivery polished to perfection, and her technology genuinely groundbreaking. The investors nodded approvingly, their expressions suggesting serious interest. Next came a biotech team developing lab-grown organs, followed by an AI system that could predict natural disasters with unprecedented accuracy. Each presentation raised the bar higher, creating an atmosphere where anything less than perfection seemed inadequate. Judgment and bad behavior had become judgment in a failed. By preference, germs. Ezra's turn arrived like a thunderclap. His presentation on AI-driven water infrastructure unfolded exactly as rehearsed, compelling statistics about water scarcity, innovative solutions using machine learning, and projections showing massive scalability. The investors leaned forward during his demonstration of predictive pipe failure technology. Impressive work, Mr. Chen. Dr. Sarah Blackwood, the MIT professor turned venture capitalist, said during the question period. How do you plan to compete against established players like IBM and Cisco, who have significantly more resources? Our competitive advantage lies in specialization, Ezra replied confidently. We've built relationships with municipal water authorities and understand their specific challenges in ways that generalist tech companies cannot replicate. The questions continued, each one probing potential weaknesses in his business model. By the session's end, Ezra felt cautiously optimistic. The investors had engaged seriously with his ideas, suggesting genuine interest, rather than polite dismissal. As lunch break began, contestants clustered around catering tables, their conversations mixing nervous energy with carefully controlled competitiveness. The atmosphere crackled with ambition as young entrepreneurs sized up their competition while maintaining facades of collegial support. That's when she appeared. The woman entered through the main doors with careful, measured steps, her silver hair pulled into a neat bun secured with what looked like a vintage hairpin. She wore a navy blue dress that might have been fashionable in the 1980s, paired with sensible shoes that had clearly seen years of use. Her weathered hands clutched an ancient leather briefcase, its brass corners worn smooth by decades of handling. "Is someone lost?" muttered a voice nearby. "Maybe she's looking for the senior center next door," another contestant whispered, triggering a ripple of barely suppressed laughter. The woman appeared to be in her 70s or 80s, moving with the deliberate care of someone whose joints had accumulated decades of wear. Everything about her presence seemed utterly incongruous with the high-tech environment, from her old-fashioned clothing to her complete lack of modern devices. She approached the registration desk, where a harried volunteer was processing late arrivals. "Excuse me," the woman said, her voice carrying a slight accent that suggested English wasn't her first language. "I believe I'm scheduled to present this afternoon. Celestine Okafor." The volunteer scrolled through her tablet, confusion creasing her features. "Could you spell that last name?" "Okafor," the woman replied patiently, seemingly oblivious to the curious stares gathering around her. "Found it," the volunteer said, her tone taking on the overly bright quality people use when trying to mask awkwardness. "You're presenting distributed energy generation through ambient temperature differentials. Is that correct?" "That's correct," Celestine confirmed, accepting her presentation materials with calm dignity. The whispers started immediately. "She's actually competing? This has to be some kind of administrative error. I almost feel sorry for her." Ezra watched as Celestine found a seat near the back, seemingly unaware of the attention she was attracting. Instead of a laptop or tablet, she opened her briefcase to reveal manila folders filled with handwritten notes and what appeared to be hand-drawn diagrams. "This is going to be painful," the biotech entrepreneur next to him murmured. "Someone should tell her this isn't a community college science fair." The comment triggered more snickers, and Ezra felt his face flush with embarrassment, not for himself, but for the elderly woman who seemed about to humiliate herself in front of the industry's most influential figures. As the afternoon session resumed, presentations continued their relentless pace. Each entrepreneur brought polished slides, confident delivery, and the kind of practiced professionalism that suggested months of coaching and preparation. The investors maintained their poker faces, but subtle cues. Leaning forward, taking notes, asking follow-up questions, revealed their genuine interest in several presentations. Meanwhile, anticipation around Celestine's upcoming presentation grew like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Contestants discreetly positioned their phones to record what they assumed would be an embarrassing spectacle. Some exchanged knowing glances and suppressed grins, already mentally composing the social media posts they'd share later. "Next up," the moderator announced, "Celestine Okafor presenting distributed energy generation through ambient temperature differentials." The laughter that swept through the audience was no longer even attempting subtlety. Several contestants held up their phones openly, clearly expecting to capture viral content, showcasing incompetence on a grand stage. Celestine rose slowly, gathering her papers with unhurried movements. She walked to the stage with the same measured pace she'd used to enter the building, her worn briefcase in one hand and her manila folders in the other. The spotlight revealed the stark contrast between her humble appearance and the high-tech environment. Her decades-old dress and practical shoes looked like artifacts from another era, while behind her, a massive 4K display awaited a presentation that everyone assumed would never materialize. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice carrying clearly despite its gentleness. "My name is Celestine Okafor, and I'm here to share technology that could eliminate energy poverty for 3 billion people within this decade." The laughter diminished slightly, replaced by curious murmurs about her apparent delusion. The investors exchanged glances, their expressions suggesting they were already mentally moving to the next presenter. "I understand your skepticism," Celestine continued, a slight smile playing at her lips. "An elderly woman with handwritten notes doesn't fit your image of a tech innovator. You're wondering how someone like me could possibly understand energy systems, market dynamics, or scalable technology deployment." Her directness created an uncomfortable silence. Even the whispers stopped as people found themselves unexpectedly engaged by her candor. "You're partially correct," she said, her voice gaining strength. I don't own a smartphone. I prefer handwritten notes because they help me think more clearly. I'm not fluent in the language of venture capital or startup culture. She paused, letting her words settle. However, there are things about me that might change your perspective on what I'm about to share. Ezra felt his skepticism wavering. Something in her tone suggested confidence rooted deeper than mere preparation. 45 years ago, I was a 23-year-old materials science graduate from MIT, working in a Lagos research facility on thermoelectric energy generation. I was passionate about bringing electricity to the billions of people who lived without it. Several audience members shifted uncomfortably as they realized this wasn't the rambling confusion they'd expected. I developed breakthrough materials that could generate electricity from ambient temperature differences. Completely sustainable, requiring no fuel, no maintenance, capable of producing power in any climate on Earth. The murmurs changed character, curiosity beginning to replace mockery as people questioned their initial assumptions. I was young, ambitious, and convinced the world was ready for my innovation. I pitched American investors, European corporations, Asian manufacturers. Do you know what they told me? Her eyes found several contestants who had been laughing moments earlier. They said a young African woman couldn't possibly understand global energy markets. My technology was too advanced for developing nations, too simple for developed ones. I should return to school and learn how business really worked. Complete silence had fallen over the room. Even the investors had stopped checking their devices and were giving Celestine their undivided attention. So I did exactly that, she continued, her voice taking on steel undertones. I earned an MBA from Wharton, then a law degree from Harvard. I spent 15 years working inside energy corporations, learning precisely how business really worked. Ezra felt his mouth go dry as he realized this story was heading somewhere entirely unexpected. During those years, I continued refining my technology. I built prototypes in my garage, tested them across different climates, gradually developing systems that could generate electricity anywhere, using nothing but ambient temperature variations. She reached into her briefcase and withdrew what appeared to be a small, metallic device, roughly the size of a hardcover book. This unit, she said, holding it up for the audience to see, generates enough electricity to power a typical household for 6 weeks. It requires no fuel, produces 0 emissions, and will function reliably for at least 60 years without maintenance. Without further ado, the skeptical murmurs were now mixed with genuine intrigue, from people beginning to realize this might not be the joke they'd anticipated. But I'm not here to pitch this technology to you, Celestine said, her voice rising slightly. I'm here to offer it to you. She pressed a small button on the device, and suddenly the massive screen behind her blazed to life. Complex technical diagrams, patent documents, and university research papers filled the display, all bearing official government seals and institutional logos. These represent my patents, she explained, gesturing toward the screen. 63 of them, covering every aspect of ambient temperature energy generation. They're currently licensed to a company I founded and have operated for 22 years. The next slide showed photographs from around the globe. Villages in sub-Saharan Africa, remote islands in Southeast Asia, rural communities throughout Latin America. In each image, devices similar to what Celestine held were providing electricity to homes, schools, and medical clinics. My technology currently serves 2.7 million people across 41 countries, she continued, but I'm not seeking investment to expand those numbers. I'm offering to transfer these patents to someone in this room. The audience erupted in confused whispers. Several investors leaned forward sharply, their expressions shifting from polite disinterest to intense focus. You see, Celestine said, her voice cutting through the noise, I'm 84 years old. I've dedicated 4 decades to solving energy poverty, achieving significant progress. But I've learned that the greatest barrier to widespread adoption isn't technology, it's credibility. She gestured toward the audience, her gaze settling on contestants who had dismissed her minutes earlier. People trust young, confident entrepreneurs who look like they belong in Silicon Valley. They don't trust elderly African women with handwritten notes. So I'm offering my life's work to someone who can carry it forward more effectively than I can." The silence that followed felt profound. Ezra felt like he was witnessing a magic trick, where the reveal was so unexpected that the audience couldn't process what they were seeing. "My only condition," Celestine continued, "is that whoever receives these patents commits to providing this technology at cost to any community that needs it. No profit maximization, no shareholder obligations. Just genuine dedication to ending energy poverty." Dr. Blackwood stood up, her face showing the intense interest Ezra had only seen when truly revolutionary technology was being discussed. "Ms. Okafor," she said, "are you claiming you have a proven solution to global energy poverty, and you're offering to give it away?" "Not give it away," Celestine corrected. "Transfer it to someone who promises to use it for its intended purpose. I've spent my career trying to improve the world, and I've learned that sometimes the best way forward is trusting the next generation to continue the work." She looked directly at Ezra, then at other contestants who had been so quick to dismiss her. "I've observed your presentations today, impressed by your passion, intelligence, and commitment to meaningful problems. What I haven't seen is much experience with humility, with listening to unfamiliar voices, or with recognizing that innovation can emerge from unexpected sources." Miranda Chen, the former Apple executive on the investor panel, raised her hand. "Mr. Okafor, why now? Why this competition instead of approaching established energy companies or government agencies?" Celestine smiled, and Ezra could suddenly see the ambitious young engineer she had once been. "Because I've tried those approaches for 4 decades without success. Established energy companies are too invested in existing technologies to embrace true disruption. Governments are too slow and too political. But entrepreneurs," she paused, scanning the audience, "entrepreneurs take risks. They challenge conventional wisdom. They're willing to bet everything on ideas that could change the world." She held up the device again, its unremarkable appearance belying its revolutionary potential. "This technology works. It's been tested, refined, and proven in real-world conditions across multiple continents. It's already transforming lives in dozens of countries. What it needs now is someone with energy, connections, and vision to scale it globally." The presentation timer, forgotten during every other session, seemed irrelevant now. The moderator, investors, and entire audience were completely absorbed. "But here's what 8 decades have taught me," Celestine said, her voice taking on reflective depth. "The most powerful innovations aren't just about technology. They're about challenging assumptions, questioning prejudices, and recognizing that wisdom emerges from unexpected places." She looked directly at contestants who had mocked her earlier, her expression kind but pointed. "Some of you saw me today and immediately dismissed my potential contributions. Someone too old, too unfamiliar, too different to possibly offer value. I understand that reaction. I've faced it throughout my career." Ezra felt shame burning in his cheeks. He had been one of those people, making judgments based purely on appearance and age. "But consider this," Celestine said, her voice strengthening. "If you can dismiss me so easily, how many other valuable voices are you missing? How many brilliant innovations are you overlooking because they don't arrive in expected packaging?" Her final slide displayed a world map dotted with millions of points, representing communities still lacking electricity access. Each dot represents thousands of people who experience darkness every night. No light for reading, no power for communication, no access to opportunities that electricity enables. My technology can change that, but only in hands of someone who truly understands service to others. The 7-minute timer chimed, but nobody moved to end the presentation. Even Volkov, who had rigidly maintained schedule adherence all day, seemed reluctant to interrupt. "In conclusion," Celestine said, her voice carrying decades of accumulated wisdom, "I'm not here to compete with you. I'm offering you the opportunity to compete with yourselves, to push beyond perceived limitations, to serve people you've never met, and to prove that this generation of entrepreneurs can achieve both success and significance. She gathered her papers, closed her briefcase, and returned to her seat with the same deliberate pace. The audience remained motionless, still processing what they had witnessed. Volkov broke the spell by standing and beginning to applaud. The sound started slowly but built rapidly, spreading through the entire audience until everyone was standing, clapping with enthusiasm, usually reserved for sports victories or concert finales. Ezra found himself applauding harder than ever before, his face burning with admiration mixed with shame. He had judged so quickly, dismissed so easily, based on nothing substantial. As applause subsided, Volkov approached the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying genuine awe. "In 3 decades of evaluating innovations, I have never experienced anything like this. Ms. Okafor has presented not just revolutionary technology, but a revolutionary perspective on what innovation truly means." He turned directly to Celestine. "Mrs. Okafor, is your offer genuine? Are you actually willing to transfer patents worth potentially hundreds of millions to complete strangers?" Celestine stood slowly, her voice clear and strong. "Mr. Volkov, I've spent my entire career working on problems that matter. At my age, money matters far less than legacy. I want assurance this technology will help people, not just generate profits." The judging panel's deliberation lasted over 2 hours, far longer than their usual rapid decisions. Through the glass walls of their conference room, the audience could see animated discussions, complex calculations, and what appeared to be profound conversations about values and purpose. When they finally returned, Volkov's expression was unlike anything Ezra had seen from him before. "Today we witnessed something extraordinary," he began. "We expected to evaluate business plans and investment opportunities. Instead, we found ourselves challenged to reconsider what success actually means." He paused, looking at Celestine with obvious respect. "Mrs. Okafor, you have presented not just breakthrough technology, but a breakthrough in thinking about entrepreneurship. You've demonstrated that innovation isn't just about creation, but about how we choose to use our creations." Turning to address the full audience, he continued, "After extensive deliberation, we're doing something unprecedented. We're awarding our full investment to establish the Global Energy Access Consortium, with Ms. Okafor as Chief Technology Officer and Mr. Chen as Chief Executive Officer, combining her revolutionary technology with his expertise in AI-driven infrastructure." The room exploded in applause, but Volkov raised his hand. "Furthermore, we're creating a new mentorship initiative where experienced innovators like Ms. Okafor will work directly with emerging entrepreneurs, sharing not just technical knowledge but the wisdom that comes from decades of service." Ezra approached Celestine, his heart full of gratitude and humility. "Ms. Okafor," he said, "working with you won't just change my business. It's going to transform who I am as a person." Celestine took his hand warmly. "Ezra, the most beautiful aspect of innovation is that it's not just about creating something new, it's about becoming someone new in the process. Today you've shown me that this generation has courage to grow, admit mistakes, and choose service over self-interest." The months that followed transformed Ezra's understanding of success. The consortium's first project brought electricity to remote villages in Tanzania, but more importantly, it brought Ezra face-to-face with the people his technology would serve. Living in Kip Karen village for 6 weeks, sleeping in a mud hut, eating meals cooked over wood fires, learning what life without electricity actually meant, Ezra finally understood Celestine's lesson. When their system illuminated the village school for the first time, allowing children to study after sunset, he comprehended what true success looked like. The consortium expanded rapidly, serving over 800 communities across 5 continents within 18 months. But its greatest achievement wasn't measured in installations or revenue. It was the transformation of everyone involved, from engineers to investors to the communities themselves. Years later, when Ezra found himself judging similar competitions, he always watched for elderly figures shuffling into presentation halls. The lesson Celestine taught had spread throughout the industry. Innovation comes from unexpected places, wisdom doesn't conform to stereotypes, and the most powerful technologies emerge when brilliant minds combine with compassionate hearts. 3 years after the event that changed Silicon Valley forever, the real impact of Celestine Okafor's revelation was just beginning to unfold across the global innovation landscape. The boardroom at venture capital giant Meridian Partners buzzed with tension as Managing Director Rebecca Torres reviewed the quarterly portfolio report. Numbers told one story, but the cultural shift happening across their investments told another entirely. Our success rate has increased 47% since we implemented the Okafor Protocol, she announced to her team of partners. Companies led by non-traditional founders are outperforming our conventional investments by every metric. The Okafor Protocol had emerged organically across Silicon Valley, a systematic approach to identifying overlooked innovators. Named after the elderly woman who had shocked TechVenture Summit 2024, it challenged investment firms to actively seek brilliant minds hiding in unexpected places. Marcus Williams, a junior partner who had initially resisted the new approach, raised his hand tentatively. "I have to admit, when we started this initiative, I thought we were just being politically correct, but the results speak for themselves." Their most recent success story involved 72-year-old Rosa Delgado, a former textile worker from Guatemala, who had developed revolutionary biodegradable packaging from corn husks. Traditional investors had dismissed her broken English and hand-sewn prototypes, but Meridian recognized the genius behind her simple presentation. "Rosa's technology is now being adopted by Amazon and Walmart," Rebecca continued. "Her packaging solution could eliminate millions of tons of plastic waste annually. We almost missed it because she didn't fit our typical founder profile." Meanwhile, across the country, at MIT's Innovation Lab, Professor David Kim was conducting the most comprehensive study ever undertaken on innovation bias. His research team had analyzed over 10,000 startup pitches from the past 5 years, coding them for presenter demographics, presentation style, and ultimate success rates. "The data is undeniable," he explained to a packed auditorium of business school students. "Ideas presented by older entrepreneurs, women, minorities, and people with accents were systematically undervalued, regardless of their technical merit or market potential." His study had identified what researchers now called the Celestine Effect, the tendency for truly revolutionary innovations to be overlooked when they came from unexpected sources. The effect was so pronounced that it had become a case study at business schools worldwide. "Consider this," Professor Kim continued, advancing to his next slide. "The average age of successful entrepreneurs at IPO is actually 45, not 25 as commonly believed. Yet investors consistently favor younger founders, often missing opportunities to back experienced innovators with deeper market understanding. System thinking requires understanding." One student raised her hand. "Professor, how do we overcome these biases when they seem to be unconscious?" "That's exactly the question Celestine Okafor was asking," Kim replied. "The solution isn't just awareness, it's systematic change in how we evaluate innovation." At Stanford's Graduate School of Business, the Okafor Fellowship had become the most competitive program in the institution's history. Unlike traditional business programs, it specifically recruited students from non-traditional backgrounds: former nurses developing medical devices, retired teachers creating educational technology, immigrant small business owners solving community problems. Raj Patel, a 58-year-old former taxi driver from Mumbai, was presenting his transportation optimization algorithm to a room full of venture capitalists. His broken English and thick accent had initially caused some investors to exchange skeptical glances, but his technology could reduce urban traffic congestion by 30%. "My algorithm learns from actual driver behavior, not theoretical models," he explained, his confidence growing despite his linguistic limitations. "I understand traffic because I lived in it for 20 years. The presentation concluded to enthusiastic applause, and 3 investment firms immediately requested follow-up meetings. The Okafor Fellowship had taught investors to listen beyond accents and appearances, focusing instead on the depth of understanding that came from lived experience. Dr. Jennifer Nash, the program's director, observed these interactions with satisfaction. Traditional business education teaches students to present like Silicon Valley founders, she reflected. But we're learning that authenticity and real-world experience often matter more than polished presentations. In rural Kenya, the impact of Celestine's technology was creating unexpected ripple effects. The village of Kipkaren, where Ezra had lived during his 6-week immersion, had become a model for sustainable development that attracted visitors from around the world. Mary Wanjiku, the village's head teacher, stood before a group of World Bank officials, explaining how reliable electricity had transformed their community. Before Celestine's devices, our children could not study after dark, she said in fluent English that surprised some visitors. Now we have students accepted to university for the first time in our village's history. The electricity had enabled more than just extended study hours. A local entrepreneur had started a cell phone charging business, a seamstress had expanded her operations with an electric sewing machine, and the village clinic could now refrigerate vaccines and operate essential medical equipment. But the most important change, Mary continued, is that we now have proof that innovation can come from anywhere. Our young people see that age and appearance don't determine who can change the world. Back in Silicon Valley, the annual TechVenture Summit had evolved dramatically. The 2027 competition featured a diverse array of presenters that would have been unimaginable just 3 years earlier. A 65-year-old former coal miner pitched carbon capture technology, a teenage refugee presented water purification systems, and a group of retired aerospace engineers demonstrated revolutionary battery storage. The most anticipated presentation came from Dr. Amara Okonkwo, Celestine's former research assistant, who had remained quietly in the background for decades. Now 73 herself, Dr. Okonkwo had finally stepped forward with her own breakthrough: atmospheric processors that could restore oxygen levels to polluted urban environments. I learned from Celestine that timing matters, she explained to the rapt audience. For 30 years, I thought the world wasn't ready for this technology, but watching her courage inspired me to finally share what I've been developing. Her atmospheric processors were already being tested in Beijing and Mexico City, showing promising results in reducing air pollution and improving public health. Major cities worldwide were requesting pilot programs, and environmental organizations were calling it the most significant clean air breakthrough in decades. Ezra Chen, now 32, and CEO of the Global Energy Access Consortium, watched Dr. Okonkwo's presentation with deep emotion. His own transformation had been profound. From an ambitious young entrepreneur focused primarily on personal success to a leader genuinely committed to global impact. 3 years ago, I would have dismissed Dr. Okonkwo, just like I dismissed Celestine, he admitted during a panel discussion after the presentations. I've learned that humility isn't just a nice personality trait, it's essential for innovation. The moment you think you know what an innovator looks like, you stop seeing real innovation. The consortium had grown into one of the world's largest social enterprises, serving over 2 million people across 70 countries. But Ezra measured success differently now, not in revenue or market share, but in the number of children who could study after dark, the number of clinics that could refrigerate medicine, the number of small businesses that could operate after sunset. Celestine, now 87, continued working with the same passion that had driven her for 6 decades. Her latest project involved training young engineers from developing countries, passing on not just technical knowledge, but the wisdom that came from decades of perseverance. The most important thing I teach them, she explained to a group of MIT students during a guest lecture, is that innovation isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about listening to the people you're trying to serve and having the humility to learn from anyone. The cultural shift extended beyond technology into other industries. Medical research was discovering breakthrough treatments developed by traditional healers. Agricultural innovations were emerging from subsistence farmers, and educational breakthroughs were coming from teachers in under-resourced schools. The Celestine Standard had become shorthand for inclusive innovation, the practice of actively seeking wisdom from unexpected sources and measuring success by social impact rather than just financial returns. Business schools worldwide now required courses on innovation bias, and many companies had adopted hiring practices that specifically valued diverse life experiences over traditional credentials. As the TechVenture Summit 2027 concluded, a new generation of entrepreneurs left with a fundamentally different understanding of what it meant to innovate. They had seen that genius could emerge from anywhere, that experience mattered more than age, and that the most powerful technologies came from deep understanding of human needs rather than abstract technical brilliance. The revolution that began with an elderly woman shuffling into a startup competition had evolved into a global movement that was literally changing the world, one overlooked innovator at a time. And in villages, cities, and laboratories across the globe, the quiet hum of breakthrough technologies developed by unexpected heroes continued to power humanity's most hopeful future.